how to answer HireVue questions for an investment bank. Woo! Hello and welcome back to another video. So yeah, first of all, I just want to say subscribe, like, comment, share, all that good stuff. I hate saying that, but unfortunately, trying to hit 1,000 subscribers as soon as we can. We're getting very close actually, so appreciate every single one of you who have subscribed and done all that stuff. Anyway, people have been asking me about HireVues in general, and someone who I had a call with actually fairly recently were applying to JPM, and they said these were the questions that came up. So I thought, why not sort of show people how I would answer them and what I would look for if I saw these questions. Now, these can probably be applicable for a load of different companies, not just JPM. So yeah, we're just going to focus on generic sort of answers here, but like I said, you can just tailor it and apply where you want to. So generally, how HireVues are set out, if you haven't heard about them, if you've been living under a rock, essentially a HireVue interview is something you do online. You generally get like prep time. They'll give you a question, they'll be like, you get 30 seconds prep time and then 2 minutes to answer the question. You do it literally in front of your computer. There's no one else. You're not doing it to a person or anything, so it's kind of weird. It's really important to the way that you prep for these, and I've done a separate video on that, so go check that out. I'll put that in the description below. So yeah, go check that one out. I think it's really good that's just generic how to prep for them. Now, the first question we want to start with is, why finance? Recently, I was at Nottingham Uni or not, privileged enough to give a talk to a few students. Shout out to the person, I don't know if they want me to mention their name, but yeah, for setting it all up. So thank you for that. And one of the students at the end actually came and asked me this question, like, how do I talk about, when they say, why do you want to get into finance in general? Now, for me, the most important thing is to make this as personal as you can. So the way I used to answer this when I was going for grad schemes and things like that would be, what sort of sparked that initial interest in it? So that may be, like, if you're applying for Spring Weeks, it's going to be prior to uni, I'm assuming. If you're applying for grad schemes or anything like that, it might be whilst you're at uni. But there needs to be a catalyst for that. So for me, it was always, I was good at maths at school. So I did maths at A-level, further maths at A-level. But one of my A-levels that I took was business and econ. Now, I never really wanted to be a maths teacher. I never wanted to, and that's all I could think about with doing maths or like doing some research. It just wasn't my bag. But then I started looking at in business and econ. I was like, I really find this interesting. And I was like, what careers can I utilize sort of my maths brain and sort of that analytical side, but also have something that's quite client facing? And then I put 2 and 2 together and I looked at like M&A and IB. So that gave me the perfect balance in order to, have that analytical side, being able to be exposed to a whole host of C-suites and clients on the buy side, but also companies as well. And then the last thing for me was just being able to work in an industry that has sort of a real world impact. What I mean by that is, so for instance, if one company is taking another company, you're basically having an impact on those people's lives that work within the company and stuff, and being able to sort of see that the value of your work, I think that was something that really appealed to me. And I'd like to talk about that when I'm doing these sort of questions about why finance. The other side that you can always talk about is sort of the nature of the job in terms of how it's quite fast paced, how that it's quite a varied job. There's loads of different things that you can be doing, and no two deals are the same as each other. You have to show that enthusiasm in a way that you can cope with the pressures of working like to tight deadlines, and you enjoy the thrill of being able to get something across the line and that sort of dopamine hit that you get when you've completed something and it's come off. There's so many different ways to attack this, but the main thing is that you always pull it back to you. Pull it back to why you did certain things, like, I don't know, with like at school, for instance, or maybe you joined a society and you got talking to someone and you really liked the way that they came across and they described banking, and you were like, oh my God, that is something that I would love to do. And then you start doing more research into it, and then you realize, the modeling side of it, you'd like to understand how different companies are valued in different sectors. And I think that's personally the way that I would tackle this question. And the thing is, I can't give you a view as to what I see from grads, because I'm not part of like a HR team that goes through all the HireVue interview answers and things like that. I've conducted like last round interviews generally, so I can't really give you an answer in terms of what to do in a HireVue. But make sure you just jot these points down, and like I said, try and make it always relating back to you. That is the key here. I think people miss out on that. They just regurgitate what they see, and that lastly, what I want to say is talk about how maybe you read the news, and generally the things that you're more interested in is the business the business aspect of it. Like, you go into the business news bit, you read the Financial Times, whatever it is, and you just like to know how, like, stock markets move, and you find it fascinating how literally one thing that is said by a major figure in the world, whether that's in politics, whether that's a celebrity or something, can have a dramatic effect on a stock. So we've obviously seen earlier this year the Trump tariffs, how the stock markets went down by 40% in certain areas. That had an effect from a political standpoint. But even like over 10 years ago, I think it was, or maybe less than 10 years ago, Kylie Jenner, for instance, she was using Snapchat, and I think Snapchat rolled out a new update, and she said, I'm going to stop using Snapchat now. And their shares on the back of her tweeting that tanked. I find that amazing. And I just like the fact how one person can influence so much in the stock market, and that just genuinely excites me. Now, the second question is, why the company? I think here it's really important to understand companies always have these values, what they look for and things like that. So I always look at the values that they encompass, and I don't look at, some companies have loads, right? Just look at 2 or 3 that you, again, pull it back to you, that you can resonate with. So if there's a certain value that, I don't know, talks about being entrepreneurial, and maybe you started a business, I don't know what it was, you can talk about that. You can talk about, you look for entrepreneurial mindsets, blah, blah, blah. So pick 2 or 3 values and then resonate them back to you. Talk about the firm's standing within the market it's in. Now, it's probably easier sometimes to talk about the bigger companies. You can say, they have such this reputation within these specific markets, these specific areas, and this is what really interests me. But the thing is, when you're at a smaller firm, you can talk about, I don't know, like I went to a mid-market bank, so I talk about mid-market deals, and how I find them interesting, because there seems to be sometimes a lot more activity at that end. So, because a lot of the companies there are easy to be bought as well, but also you can get a lot of sell side mandates, but they can also pick up smaller companies as well below them. So you can talk about like the exposure that you might get at a smaller firm, and things like that. And yeah, like if you know someone as well, if you have a contact there, talk about how they've described it, talk about culture, refer to any names, literally name drop people. That's what I would definitely do. But you need to talk about, like, they're standing with the market. Maybe if they're a public company, have a look at how they've been trading, see if they're on an upwards trajectory, check out their financial statements, check if they are like revenue, like growing in revenue, what divisions they're growing in. Talk about how you want to be part of a growing journey. What I do for public companies is always look at sort of the investor presentation that they give out to at the back of their results, whether it's half-year results or 4-year results. And in there will be certain slides where how they're going to use their capital. So like capital allocations are a big thing for public companies, and from there you can tell sort of the journey that the company is on. Maybe they're at a stage where they're going to use capital allocation for a lot of in-house, like, well, infill M&A, let's say, and you can say you want to be part of a company that's constantly growing. You see the capital allocation is doing this, and It's able to pay out dividends to shareholders, which shows that, you know, they have confidence in themselves going forward. So you need to play on all of these different things. And like I said, always pull it to you, always pull it back to you as to why is it important to you. It's not just, oh, why JPM, because everyone can just read off a sheet, right? So you need to be able to have some stories in there. Maybe say, I don't know, like I said with the values, talk about, I don't know, like a business or something you had. But you need to, one thing that with HireVue, you need to try and make this concise. So prep is key. That's why I said, please check out my other video, which I've talked through about that for sure. Now, the next question is, what company and sector do you follow? One thing I will say is ensure that you pick a company that is interesting to you and a sector that's interesting to you, because then naturally you'll be able to talk about it more enthusiastically. Don't pick something that you think they will be impressed by. It can be a basic company, it literally doesn't matter. Pick a public company because it's easier to talk about them because there's a lot more information on them. So that's one thing I would say. So talk about an Apple if you really want to, or a Tesla, whatever it is, or it could be Microsoft, it could be literally any public company, like Shell is a public company. I think it's Shell, I'm pretty sure. BP, like all these companies are public, so it's easy to just talk about their share price and how they've been going on. And yeah, the other thing is, try to make it a company that fits into one of the sectors at the firm though. Like for a JPM, because they cover pretty much every sector, it's calm. But if you're going for a job specifically for a sector, make sure that you've picked a sector, picked a sector that is a sector you're applying for, and a company within that sector too. Now, what you need to look here is basically look at how they've been tracking over time, what's their recent news flow been, what's their future looking like, and all that information you can get, like I said, from investor presentations that they give, or even like investment reports if you can find them online. Like from the sell side, you'll see equity research reports. These can give a good indication to the investment thesis to the company, and you can basically just regurgitate that stuff, I'll be honest with you. But they can be quite hard to find because usually companies have to pay for those. But in general, like, you'll be able to get a lot of things on these companies. And like I said, bring it back to you. Why do you like this? Maybe you're talking about Apple because you own an iPhone, because you've been part of the Apple ecosystem for the last 5 to 10 years. Whatever it is, always pull it back to why it's interesting to you and what sort of galvanizes you to follow this stock in particular. It can be a little niche stock, but you've just got to have good reasons as to why you're doing it, and it's got to have enough news flow, I'll be honest, for you to talk about. Like for the iPhone, let's focus on Apple for a minute. You can talk about, you know, how they've sort of changed strategy in the last few years, where, you know, they're releasing things more frequently, especially with their computers and laptops and stuff, because of the new Apple silicon chips. You can talk about, so they've almost gone like on this volume front now. They've introduced sort of more phones within their range to appeal to a wider mass market. If you're looking at Tesla, actually, Tesla are literally doing the same thing. Tesla have just released news on their new Model Y, I think it is, which is cheaper than another one, to try and, you know, try and get a different demographic. Or it could be price laddering. People do that as well. So I think Tesla are actually doing it for a price laddering approach, which is where you introduce a slightly cheaper model, but really and truly the slightly more expensive model is a better value option. So basically your eye comes in because, oh, it's kind of a bit cheaper, but then when you get there, you're like, actually, I might as well just go for the expensive one now. But it's basically just bringing you through the door. A lot of companies do that. Apple do it as well with their iPhone sort of iPhone range as well. So you can literally talk about all this stuff on the company, and you just say how it's performing, how you see it's going to perform. Always have an opinion on it. That's the key as well. How do you think Apple are going to fare in 5 years' time? Is there growing competition from different firms? Should they be expanding into new markets? Are they okay to, the way that they've started manufacturing a lot in India now? How does that affect sort of their profits going forward? Obviously, they got around the trade war essentially, but if that comes up again, how would that affect everything? And yeah, you need to literally talk about all these possibilities, but distill it into 2 minutes. The last question I'm going to talk about is one that's more competency based, I feel, but it did appear on this HireVue, so let me talk about it. It was talk about a time you had to check multiple sources and how to approach that specific problem. So what they're looking for here is your thinking behind how you go about something, because this happens a lot, especially within IB. When you're doing a pitch deck or something, or you're even doing analysis for a company who've asked you for something, you have to go digging. You literally have to go digging on the net, wherever it is. And more likely than not, you will never find just one place that has all the information. You will have to pick it out from a bunch of different places. And the issue is the methodology is always different, which is hella annoying. But that's just the way it is. So you have to, they're using the STAR, I always say the STAR method, that's what most people call it. I think of it as like a science report, but use the STAR method for competency questions, or for me, like I said, set it out like a science report. So at the top, you have your hypothesis. Next, you have your method. Next, you have your results. And next, you have your conclusion. That's the way I saw it. It's literally like STAR method, but I just think of it like that. So with this, like, talk about, it could be literally anything. It doesn't need to be work. It could be work related maybe, but it could also be like a personal project that you had to do. It could be something that you did at sixth form, or you did at university, depending on what you're applying for. And you just have to say, look, this was we were tasked with this. This is what we had to do. So maybe it was, I don't know, we were doing a group task at uni or at school, and we were told we had to make a presentation on, I don't know, the rate of mangoes being eaten in Colombia. Okay, cool. Now, you're going to say, okay, so basically what we did, we split the team into two different areas. One was more research, one was more on the presentation side, whatever it is. So, and say like I was on the research side, so we started looking online. We found loads of different resources. However, they all had different numbers. What we did was then we sort of tried to calibrate which were more reliable resources, like look where they're actually coming from, and had to cross check. And if we were cross checking and a lot of them matched, then we went with those sort of numbers there. And one thing we had to then caveat was the methodology that was used, because the methodology was always different on every single one. So we made sure that we footnoted everything. And yeah, we just ensure that we exhausted all of our options before we arrived at our final answer, and just try to cross-check as much as we could. And then you can just say, and then we presented this and to our cohort, and we managed to get a really good grade, wherever it is. The key that they're looking for though here is the cross-checking element, and also the ability to understand that different information can have different methodologies, which can skew your results. So it's really important to put that across, because like I said, you're going to be doing a lot of pitch decks in your first year, probably, depending on what bank you're at, if you're going to a bank. And if not, if you're working for clients, you're going to have to do a lot of analysis, peer analysis and stuff like that. So get it from loads of different peers. And the thing is, even if you've got public companies talk about like free cash flow, for instance, in loads of different ways. They'll talk about their gearing ratio in different ways. So you always have to caveat that. And maybe what you do is you just go for, you say, this is our methodology for a gearing ratio. So we look at their balance sheet and their P&L and take the relevant numbers from there in order to then construct our own version of our gearing ratio for that specific company. So then it's all aligned, it's all on the same basis. So then you can compare like for like. That's a way to tackle that as well. But yeah, look, there's loads of different ways to tackle these questions. I'm just giving you sort of what I would say. And I believe that's what most people would look for. If I was reviewing these HireVues, that's what I would definitely look for. And if I was interviewing this person in person, I would look for this as an answer. So yeah, that's my take on it. But yeah, I think that's it, guys. We'll leave it for there. As I said, please like, share, subscribe, comment below, hit a notification bell. We're trying to hit 1,000 subs as soon as we can, trying to get 4,000 watch hours within the next like 5 months. I think we've got 5-6 months to try and get that. So let's try and smash that, because I want to get monetized so I can make better videos for you. And the incentive is I'm going to drop a day in the life of IB in investment banking as soon as we get monetized on this channel. But yeah, any questions, drop them in the comments below. If you want me to do whatever videos you want me to do, please drop it in the comment below as well, because I'm trying to help you guys as much as I can. This channel is essentially for you. It's for you guys to get the most out of it. It's not just about what I want to do. So please, please, please let me know what you want to see, and I will record that as soon as I can. But until next time, peace.